And it's very interesting to know how this happened, and if we understand how this public opinion changes, is this something that we can use in future projects, in future developments? And also for such kind of topics, the university here has specialists who know how to deal with these kind of things, who know how to research this, and also maybe know how to help us. Professor Goda.
Thank you very much. So we are shifting gears completely to a different area, but we're used to that at the University of Groningen. So we are already doing a lot of interdisciplinary collaborations and communications and dialogue. So we are used to thinking about societal challenges from different perspectives, technological, legal, psychological, etc., etc. And the work we are doing at the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences focuses on public perceptions and public acceptability of transitions, of sustainable transitions. Why? Because sustainable transitions can be a technological challenge on the one hand, but it is also, and sometimes even more, a societal challenge. And here are just a couple of examples. My own expertise is energy. That's why most of the talk is about energy-related topics. And here are a few international and local examples. The picture on the top left, it's from Patagonia, Chile, beautiful natural area, protest against hydro, I'm also translating from Dutch to English, hydro energy. So building dams to provide energy. You would say, and we see from public surveys, renewable energy in general gets quite public support. Solar, wind, water, people are quite positive about it. But when it comes to local projects, when it comes to local areas, then they are often also met with opposition. This is an example where public protest took 8 years until the project was eventually cancelled. And you could imagine the frustration, not only the public side, but also on the developer side, who first did get a permit from the Chilean government to build the power plant, but at the end, because of public resistance, had to withdraw. The second example is from Romania, protest against big developer with ambitions to develop shale gas. A lot of public protest against shale gas exploration. The two bottom pictures are from the Netherlands. On the left, protest against wind energy, and I always like this international comparisons because in other countries, you see this emotion and anger and really protest. And in the Netherlands, you really have to look for these pictures that would have to tell a lot. And then you see a few people saying, well, no, against wind. But it does happen, and it does stop wind parks. We also have examples of carbon capture and storage also being stopped, partly because of public resistance. And the last picture is from Groningen, from the province of Groningen, protest against gas extraction. And I particularly think that this picture still tells a lot because the person is saying stop pretty much everything. Stop gas extraction, stop high voltage electricity lines, and stop wind parks. I'm not an expert. You are experts. To my understanding, no matter what kind of electricity you will go for, you will need the high power electricity lines. But I don't know. Sometimes apparently you reach the level where people just don't want anything. And I will show in my presentation, it doesn't have to do only with the technology itself. It has to do sometimes even more with who is developing the technology and how it is being developed and what role the public can play in that. So what does underline these public reactions? We've done a lot of research into people's values in the Netherlands, also internationally, and we've managed to distill 4 main values that influence public perceptions and acceptability of, for instance, energy developments. The 2 ones on top, altruistic and biospheric values, they have to do with others, not so much with myself, right? Altruistic values, if I have strong altruistic values, I care about other people, society, future generations. Biospheric values, caring about nature, the environment. The ones below, we have egoistic and hedonic values. It's much more about myself. Egoistic values, caring about personal resources. Nothing wrong with egoistic values. They sound a little bit negative, but we all have them. It's caring about your personal resources, about your ambition, about your dreams, about your pursuit, being able to achieve that. Hedonic values are similar. It's about yourself, but it's more about pleasure and comfort. When I give presentations about values, the typical question that I get is, how many egoists and how many environmentalists live in the Netherlands? And even better, in the province of Groningen. Can you tell us? That's not how the value theory works. It's developed on the theories of basic needs and values of people, means that we all have these values, and we have them all. We may differ to some extent in how we prioritize these values, but in general, these are the major 4 things that you also can think about when you develop your technologies. These will be the 4 things that people will focus on. They will focus on egoistic, what it will cost me, but they will also focus on hedonic values. What will it make sound? Will it be dangerous? Will I see it? Will I smell it with energy sources, sometimes with biomass? And they also focus on altruistic and biospheric values. What are we doing for the future? Is this green? Does it make sense in that sense? These will be the questions and the things that people will ask you about. These are the studies, the very first studies that where we tested the value theory in the energy sector, and later on we replicated it with many more energy sources, including nuclear energy. It's already shown. We basically measured people's values and we asked people what they think about different energy sources. To make it very simple, renewables or nuclear. What we see is that people who had stronger biospheric values cared more about nature and the environment, very positive about renewable energy sources, less positive about nuclear energy. Whereas exactly the opposite we saw for egoistic values, people who care more about personal resources, prefer or like more the nuclear energy and somewhat less the renewable energy. 2015, 10 years ago, we might see completely different picture now, and students are doing research on that. Nuclear energy is also becoming cheaper. Renewables as well. People had these egoistic concerns, right? Oh, it will cost me a lot of money. Renewables as well got much cheaper. I would like to see what kind of picture we evolves. Now, but this is just to remind that there are 4 motivations that people find important when they think about technological developments. Focusing on one motivation only will not convince the public, be it money, be it environment. If we only say, oh, it will be cheaper, or if we only say, oh, it will be better for the environment, that's not enough. You have to think about the package of the 4 main motivations. But as I said, it doesn't depend only on what kind of technology or what kind of development you have. It also depends in who is doing it. And we do a lot of research on trust and responsible parties. There are 2 types of trust that we distinguish in the literature. So there's general trust, but there are 2 components that build the general trust. Competence-based trust and integrity-based trust. Competence, well, if someone is developing something, if somebody is coming with a new innovation, I want to know whether those parties or whether that person has enough expertise and enough capacity, or perhaps a company, to do that. And there is integrity. If someone comes with a new innovation, I want to know whether that person or company or government, whether they have good intentions. Do we share similar values? Do they take my interest into account when they develop this? So 2 components of trust. Which one do you think is more important for people's general trust in the party? Which one weighs more, in your opinion? Correct. Integrity. We did research also in energy, and we see that even with such complex issues as energy developments, also risky technologies, integrity is more important for people than competence. Not to say that competence is not important. I guess people don't want completely incompetent companies to take the job, but integrity is an important one. And often I would say a forgotten one in communication. So what you see is companies or governments or developers saying, well, we know what we are doing, trust us, we have been doing this for a long time, we have the right technology, we have the right expertise. But not often it is said about what kind of values we find important, what is our corporate responsibility, what kind of dreams and ideals do we have as a company. I will present some studies on hydrogen actually, but as psychologists, we see that similar processes, similar psychological constructs play a role in different energy sources, so nuclear or whatever else you are considering. This is an experimental study. So what we do sometimes in psychology, we provide people different scenarios, different possibilities. Some people see one, some people see another, and then we see what kind of different reactions it triggers. And this was a very simple, what we call 2x2 design. So we presented people with two companies. We didn't name any names. We said, well, this is either the company that has a history of working with fossil fuels, or this is a company that has a history of working with renewables. So fossil fuel company or renewable company. And then we said this company decided to invest in hydrogen developments for the green, more sustainable future. And then we varied whether it was green hydrogen or blue hydrogen. So from renewables or from gas, but with carbon capture and storage. And we wanted basically to know how much people will trust that company in developing this product, and also how acceptable they would find the use and the development of hydrogen. First, we looked at trust and reputation. So I will walk you through this. We saw that when people were introduced to a fossil fuel company, they were much more thinking, oh, this company is only doing this to increase it, to make their reputation better. So they say that they will do now something green just to increase their reputation. And they think more so for the fossil fuel company than renewables, while the opposite we see for trust. So they tend to trust more the renewables energy company than the fossil fuel company. And interestingly, we saw the same for both integrity-based trust, but also competence-based trust. So people were even trusting the competence more of renewable energy company, which was interesting because fossil fuel companies, they're usually the big ones, they have the experts, but we saw the same effect. But then what we actually wanted to know most is what affected acceptability. And there we saw the color of hydrogen play the massive role. So as soon as it was green hydrogen, it was perceived as much more acceptable than the blue hydrogen, and then it didn't even matter anymore who is developing it. People just liked green hydrogen much more than the blue one. I did find a study because then I thought, okay, I am talking to the maritime industry after all. I looked up the study in Norway about the applicability of hydrogen in ships as fuel, and there they also did a study with a wide public of more than 2,000 people. What do people think about using hydrogen for ferries and passenger ships? And when you ask about hydrogen in general, people are actually either, well, neither negative or positive, or more to the positive side. But when you asked about concrete colors, you see again that the green hydrogen is very favorable. But if you use gray hydrogen, then it's even worse than just thinking about hydrogen in general. So it's almost like if you are going for it, if you're considering gray hydrogen, then better don't do it at all because it probably will backfire. But green hydrogen is receiving much more public support again. The last question. So we talked about technology and values. How does it meet different values? We talked about who is doing it and who is developing the technology. And the last question that I've been focusing most in my research in the last years is how do we develop our technologies and how we are bringing up innovations and what role does the public play? And there is an increasing sort of interest in public participation. So for a long time, we've been used to very top-down what we call technocratic developments. So engineers and governments and companies decide what will come, and then those things are introduced to the public. The latest developments in social sciences are more about, well, can we engage the public earlier in the design of the products? And this is an example of a citizen assembly. You might know we also had a citizen assembly in the Netherlands to talk about climate just at the end of last year. So the idea that people could be involved much more in the decision making from the beginning. And this is something that I wanted to bring as well. When we talk about public participation, it's very usually takes place here. This is the chain of the decision-making power that we actually developed together with the legal experts, with legal colleagues. And what we see is that when there are decisions about energy projects, they go through the entire chain, from the international agreements to national visions, regional plans, etc., etc. And then we go down the chain, and then we have local projects when a certain wind energy park has to come to a locality. Oh yes, and then we have to talk to the public, of course, because we now have to make sure that it is acceptable for the public. But what happens then? People are faced with technology that has been decided already. They know already there will be so many wind turbines, they will look in a certain way. There is a developer, everything that has already been established. What do you think people say? Thank you very much, great. No, they say, well, I don't want these wind turbines, and they even want to discuss the decisions that were made much earlier. Why do we even need more wind energy in the Netherlands in the first place? So the challenge is, can we and do we want to engage the public in dialogue earlier? These are just a couple of examples that we received from the public when we talked about the different values in the citizen assembly. We asked, okay, if the Dutch government is making their vision for future energy systems and for climate systems, what is important for you? And you see all kinds of things that people mentioned along the 4 values. And just to name a few, when we talk about egoistic values, by the way, in the assembly, when I talked to the citizens, I was not allowed to talk about egoistic values because I was told by the organization, nobody will tell that they have egoistic values. Talk better about self-values. So we talked about self-values. But what you see there that people not only talk about money, they also talk about freedom of choice. They talk about self-sufficiency as important values. When they talk about the green values, again, biospheric was not an option, so we talk about green values. They talk about nature, environment, etc., but also no greenwashing. People are quite sensitive when companies trying to pretend to be more green than they really are. It's not very trustworthy. So these are the things that people came up with, and the question is, how can you incorporate those values in your technology, in your policy, in any developments, etc. And the last thing to share, very practical, because values, of course, they sound very abstract, and I understand it is a challenge to also think about what the public wants and what are the perceptions and what are the priorities, etc. Well, in the group, we had a project financed by the Dutch Research Council, where we developed a very concrete tool. It's called the Views game. It's a small card game which is meant for developers to discuss those 4 different values. So we have the cards for those 4 values. We have also cards with emotions, and we have cards with different technologies and innovations. And the idea is that you get a couple of cards which tell what kind of value profile you have. So you are either more biospheric or egoistic person, etc., etc. And you can choose emotions that you think you would feel in response to a certain technology. So if I was a person with strong hedonic values, would I feel angry? Would I feel confused? Would I feel scared towards any technology or any innovation that perhaps you are also thinking about? For the biggest fans, I have 3 sets with me of Views game. For the rest, you can also find it online, and you can print it and play it yourself in your own teams. Thank you very much.